Welcome to a conversation with Evanston Made member artist Ted Glasoe. Hello, Ted.
Hello. How are you,
Thank
Lisa?
you. Oh, I'm good. I'm really good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good too. Thank you.
As I say at the top of all of these interviews, we are asking all the artists the same 6 questions, and we're just going to run through them. The idea is that we really give people a chance to meet you briefly and then see your work on the Evanston Made group show, virtual pop-up and gallery. And this is your 7th year participating? Have you done this every year?
I'm pretty sure I have. Yeah. I
Thank
think
you for
so.
your participation.
Thank you.
First, tell us what piece you're exhibiting in the group show. What are people going to find?
They are going to find a piece called Racing Tips. It was taken out on Lake Michigan, appropriately enough, while I was watching a sailboat race. And it was some friends on a sailboat, but we weren't participating. We were watching.
And it was a wavy day, no? Like there was a lot of motion.
Yeah. Yeah, very wavy. And I was watching and shooting some photos, and the swells kept coming up, and the boats would disappear, and then they would come back again. And so I caught it with sort of the top of the boats just peeking over the waves. So,
and I love the photo because typically a lot of your work is very horizon based and it's not always a rough lake, but you rarely shoot from within the lake. And I just thought that was such an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I did too. Actually, it was fun. It was very fun to go out on the boat and see that,
And feel the water and be.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks a little bit, when I look at the picture, I'm a little bit like, ooh, queasy. So right now, you're obviously in some type of work environment. What are you working on in your studio?
Well, I am working on a couple things. I've been walking a lot, as a lot of people have, and my wife and I have been walking down to Calvary Cemetery, which is just to the south, on the south edge of Evanston, and walking around in there and just looking. I've seen so many tombstones that are very interesting. It's a history lesson. You read, all sorts of names and people, and the reliefs of some of the tombstones have caught my eye. So I started shooting just little pieces of each tombstone, just as something not to do, but something that caught my eye. And I thought, that's kind of interesting.
That's beautiful. Why did you start walking to the cemetery?
Because it's few people, as my wife says, few living people, and it's huge. It's much bigger than I realized, because walking, a loop around the whole cemetery is, I don't know, a couple miles, and it's got all sorts of paths and different ways to walk through it and around it, and so we started doing that just as a way. And it's nice, there are no cars, nothing really to look out for, as opposed to the lakefront where you run into a lot of people and traffic and bikes and everything else. There, it's very quiet, very serene. And
Is that a walking path that you started since Shelter In? Like that's a new area for you? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been down that way, and I've walked around the cemetery along the lake, and I've walked through the cemetery a couple times. But yeah, as this pandemic has moved along, we've spent a lot more time there.
And that's been a shift in your practice, because typically you're looking east. Now you're looking within a cemetery and a lot smaller than your normal massive work.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But I love nature, and that cemetery is full of nature. It's interesting. There are coyotes and hawks and falcons and all sorts of interesting birds, and so it's fun to walk through
nighttime. I don't like walking during the day because it makes me too nervous. So I walk after sunset, and I saw 2 huge coyotes run across Lakeshore to go into the cemetery. They were massive.
Wow.
It was exciting. So
Um,
how are you
yeah,
doing without the people part during this pandemic? We do want to, just get a little personal. Like,
yeah,
is this a respite for you? Are you like, I miss
yeah.
you so much? How are you doing?
Well, that goes without saying. But, no, I'm an introvert, so I don't mind being on my own and just wandering and taking pictures. So it's kind of strange too. Both my wife and I work at home,
Hmm.
so this hasn't been a huge transition for us. We're used to being at home. We both end up going out or going to meetings or doing other things usually. So that's been a change in that we're just kind of stuck at home like everybody else. But yeah, so it's kind of the same for me. But yeah.
Okay. So much of your work, if people, one of the things we're going to do with these interviews is, post links to your website and your Instagram feeds and just your social channels. So much of your work is lake focused. And I know you do a lot of advocacy and building awareness around being a steward of the lake, but can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how you became an artist, and was it nature? Was it the lake? What was the impetus for you?
Yeah, I started out. I mean, I've always been creative in some way, I think. But early in life, my brother was sort of one of those people who was born an artist. I mean, he just had to draw and paint and do things. And I'm younger of the two, so I kind of followed him and watched him be an artist, but I wasn't the same kind of person. So I
Mhm.
didn't do it in quite the same way, but I eventually um, went into acting, which I think was my way of expressing things and getting creative was to do acting and improv and things like that. Moved to Chicago eventually to become an actor and did that for a little while. But like a lot of arts, the theater and television film, very few people make it. It's a very difficult business, like a lot of art is, um, to sort of crack through there and make a living and whatever. And so I eventually transitioned into computers. A friend of mine who went off to do summer stock had a job, and she said, "Why don't you come here and work? It's more money, whatever." So I did that. Anyway, the point is, I ended up working on a Macintosh a lot, and ended up training people on a Macintosh, and eventually learned all the graphic design programs and found that to be an artistic expression. So I went into graphic design, did that for uh, 15 or 20 years. And eventually my wife and I started our own business where she's a writer, editor. I did graphic design, and we built that business up and everything. And then I got to one of those points in life where you get kind of restless and want to do something. And digital photography was becoming very affordable and open. And I'd always loved photography. So I started doing that. And part of it was to use images in graphic design, whatever. But eventually, I just found myself wanting to do artistic, fine art. I tried portraiture, tried doing commercial work, I never did weddings, but I tried different things like that, and always came back to fine art, like wanting to take. And then I found the lake, and then it's been sort of
And that's
all
been
after that.
an absolute focus of yours
Yeah,
since then. Yeah.
yeah, for a long time. Yeah.
And who, if you had to, in terms of inspiration, are you
Hmm.
inspired by someone who's down the street painting? Are you inspired by masters? Who inspires your work?
Um, yeah, it's interesting that question. I thought about it. I thought, well, Ansel Adams is somebody who, just produced such an incredible body of work and landscapes, which I feel like that's what I do is landscapes. It's a lakescape or a waterscape, um, but I guess I've always found what's interesting is people being creative and being uh, what am I trying to say? Propelled to do it. You know, that it's just like I have to take pictures of the lake, and that's what I like, and that's what I work on. And so what inspires me is to see that that kind of drive is in all sorts of people in all sorts of ways. And it's amazing through Evanston Made to see how many people can find that kind of focus and drive in ceramics and painting, macrame, whatever it is, people find that need. And that's inspiring, that people need to do that. And like I said, art, being successful in art is very difficult. And it's amazing how many people will work at this and for a long, long time, whether they ever become, you know, famous or successful, they work at it. And that's inspires me to keep going, because I think if they can do it, so can I.
Yeah, and I love what you said at the end when you submitted your answers, is that, you know, regardless of that moment of whatever fame or success, you're just going to keep doing the work. And there is such a point of inspiration when you are introduced to so many people who are just prolific and they're just doing it because that's what they have to do. So yeah, I echo that sentiment, just because I am so inspired by people who just don't stop.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your Calvary Cemetery pictures when you're ready to share them, because I bet that you are taking really beautiful photographs of something I probably haven't spent much time looking at.
Yeah. I will
Thanks
show
for being
them
in the
to you.
show, and we look forward to promoting your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.